You're listening to Beat Autoimmune and Thrive, the podcast all about reversing and preventing autoimmune conditions so you can live your most vibrant life as soon as possible. We talk about autoimmune root causes, actionable solutions, and inspirational healing stories. I'm Palmer Kippola, and I used to have MS. Today, I'm an author, a speaker, a functional medicine certified health coach, a pickleball player, and nature lover who's helped thousands of people reclaim their health and their best lives. Let's dive into this episode. Dr. Bill Rawls has spent over 30 years in medicine as an OBGYN, but a personal battle with chronic Lyme disease in his 40s led him to discover the limitations of conventional medicine and the potential of alternative treatments. Through holistic and herbal therapies, he restored his health and became passionate about promoting cellular wellness to address and defend against microbes and other root causes of illness. Today, Dr. Rawls helps others achieve wellness through modern herbology. He shares his insights in his best-selling books, Unlocking Lyme and the Cellular Wellness Solution, highlighting the importance of herbal phytochemicals in protecting cellular health and boosting the body's own defenses. As the founder of Vital Plan, Dr. Rawls developed the Restore Kit, an advanced herbal protocol that has helped thousands of people reclaim vibrant health. And I am so thrilled to have Dr. Rawls here with me today to dive into the realm of herbs, how they are foundational for healing chronic Lyme and other autoimmune illnesses, and supporting a long and healthy life. And it's not a moment too soon. Dr. Rawls and I were talking before this interview, and it seems that, and you can correct me on this, Dr. Rawls, but nearly 60% of the U.S. population is dealing with a chronic illness. Do I have that right?
That's what the CDC says. Yeah, and it seems to be going up every year that passes. So despite spending more on healthcare than any country on earth, we keep getting sicker. And that suggests we're overlooking something that we need to be paying attention to.
Well, something is clearly missing because so many people are sick. Chances are really good that if you're listening to this, you know somebody with an autoimmune condition. Maybe you're dealing with an autoimmune disorder yourself. You've at least heard of the top ones like MS and lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. And I am so excited to have Dr. Rawls on to talk with me about what you can do to take back your health, not outsource it to the medical community, but what you can do for yourself. And so, Dr. Rawls, I always love starting with story, and you've got a really good one. Can you take us back to what happened when you were in your 40s and just give us the highlights of what you went through?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I went into obstetrics and gynecology because it was a field of medicine that dealt more with wellness, bringing life into the world instead of managing chronic illness. And most of the interventions were acute and had a great impact on people's lives. But back then, this has been over 30 years ago, being an OBGYN meant that you were taking call in the hospital, 24-hour call for labor and delivery and the emergency room. And in my practice, that came up every second to third day, every second to third weekend. And I was one of those people that if I had somebody in labor or somebody in the hospital that needed me, I just couldn't sleep. And so for 20 years, I was sleep deprived. I just rarely got a good night's sleep when I was on call. And then into my 40s, I started losing the ability to sleep and recover when I wasn't on call. That finally caught up with me, but it caught up with me more than just being sleep deprived. My whole body started breaking apart. To the point that I finally had to give up call. I didn't have a diagnosis, so I ended up starting a medical practice in primary care it was just outpatient, so I didn't have the hospital call. But I didn't get better. I was still having heart symptoms, brain symptoms, neurological symptoms, very similar to MS. Just everything in my body, my joints were shot. I was in pretty bad shape, but was confident that I could figure it out for whatever reason. And pursued a lot of different kinds of things, became certified in holistic medicine, started looking at alternative pathways, but really just wasn't getting to the level that I really thought I should. Kept searching for answers. Like so many people that had a no diagnosis or a diagnosis like fibromyalgia, kept asking that question, could it be Lyme disease? Because I grew up in the woods, bitten by ticks. I had lots of tick bites, and it's like, there's got to be something that's causing this. And I did find I was carrying some of the microbes associated with Lyme disease and thought that was the answer. Get antibiotics, I can get well. Antibiotics, round after round, made me sicker instead of better. And all the therapies out there just appeared to be really toxic. Um, I finally turned to herbal therapy because it had a low potential for toxicity. Yeah, I could afford it at that point. I was I was somewhat cash strapped, and it wasn't expensive. I could bring it to me. I didn't have to go off and chase specialists, and I gradually got better. It was a pretty intense herbal protocol, but I have spent the rest of my life, kind of career part two, working that equation, really understanding what chronic illness is, why the herbs work, and why it's not limited to just chronic Lyme disease, that they have applications in virtually everything. And
Mm.
beyond that, chronic Lyme, once I really understood what it was, I realized I was really looking at a fundamental model that explained all of chronic illness, every single bit of it. And that took me down to the cellular level, and that changed everything about my life and career.
Amazing and so profound that you had the wherewithal coming from a conventional medical model to, try what conventional medicine had, which was and may still be just antibiotics. But that didn't get you well. You felt worse. And so
Yeah.
you were left on your own, and maybe with some help of an herbologist like Buhner and some of the herbs that you started taking led you down a path to become well. But you didn't stop there. And I love your curiosity to really dig into, well, what is illness anyway, and what is wellness? And, one of the things that I want to highlight in the beginning of your book, you have this beautiful chart called the wellness spectrum here, where you
Yeah.
talk about the factors that promote wellness versus the factors that promote illness. And I thought this would be a wonderful place for you to kind of shine a light on these things, because I think many people believe that if they have a Lyme infection or they're dealing with mold toxicity or heavy metals that are causing them to be sick, well, then all you need to do is kill the microbe. All you need to do is kill whatever infection or toxin, and then you're well again. But I think you've got another perspective on that. Is that right?
It is a bit different. And where I was 15 or 20 years ago is looking for root causes of illness. So I actually had a book, one of the first books I wrote was, I guess, around 15 or more years ago. And it ended up being a book that I mainly wrote for my patients, but it was exploring that idea that illness has root causes. 15 or 20 years ago, that was novel. If you ask a doctor what are something that can cause illness, they'd say smoking cigarettes. That's about it. Um, but that idea that there are root causes to all illnesses was interesting. And that's something that we've bypassed in chronic illness, that we don't look for root causes because medical therapies, medical procedures, drugs don't treat root causes. They treat manifestations of illness. They treat symptoms and things like inflammation, but those aren't the root causes. Those are part of the processes. So as long as you're just blocking processes, you're not going to make people well. So getting to those root causes is really important.
People ask me all the time if they can get well while they're taking medication, for example, for MS or rheumatoid arthritis. And it's hard to be the bearer of bad news, but it's not addressing why you got this in the first place.
Right. I think there is a place for every medical therapy that's been designed, but we use them in place of therapies that promote healing. And that when somebody really is ill, and especially in an early stage or an acute stage, reducing symptoms or stabilizing the illness with drug therapy can be very appropriate. But if that's all you're doing, you're just never going to help that person become well.
This may be a perfect place for you to talk about your point of view about chronic illness and the connection with microbes, because I
All
think
right.
it's a point of view that many people just aren't aware of. And it's, as you mentioned in the book, it's really hard to unknow this.
Yeah.
Once you know about this connection, I really hope people get this at a cellular level that there are causes that may be really, really, really deep within. And maybe you could talk, I want to touch on that and then go into all of the terrain issues that when you talk about the factors that promote illness, link that all together for us.
Okay. You ready to go with this
I'm
now?
ready to go.
Okay, because we're going to get to the very root of every chronic illness out there. And it's really much more simple. And, when I was looking at root causes 15 years ago, it was a very macro level. But when you bring it down to that cellular level, it absolutely explains everything. So, our bodies aren't like one of Mr. Musk's robots. That robot is a unit. Our car is a unit. And if something breaks in our cell phone or our car or a robot, you've got to replace that part to to make that thing work again. So that's a real disadvantage. Our body isn't a unit. It's a composite made up of trillions and trillions and trillions of microscopic machines that we call cells. So our heart isn't a unit. It's built of billions of cells. And what that means is you can lose and replace cells continually without having to stop and redo and restart things to replace parts. So our cells are what make us unique. And our whole body is built of cells. Absolutely everything that happens, whether it's your heart beating, your brain working, your thyroid hormone being produced, it's all done by cells. So every cell in the body is like a little microscopic machine that has a job. And all cells have basically the same functional parts. Now, those parts have been modified to do different jobs, but all cells are fundamentally the same. And what that means is when you take that down to the cellular level, all cells have basic needs that they need to function properly. And here's where that root causes really comes in. So if you ask, well, what does a cell need to be healthy and do its job? Five things. It needs the right nutrients. So if you're eating a whole food diet that you're getting a wide range of nutrients, you're getting all the nutrients that your cells need to function. So they have to have the right nutrients. They have to have vitamins and minerals and protein and carbohydrates and fats to generate energy. Different cells need slightly different nutrients, but they all need nutrients. They need a clean environment. So, toxic substances like all the petroleum chemicals that we're exposed to or natural toxins like mycotoxins inhibit cellular functions. It's like throwing sand in your cells. They work, but they have to work harder, they run out faster, and they use more energy. So, they need a clean environment. Number three, cells need downtime to recover because working all day, you're going to do some wear and tear. You need to repair that. Some cells, like our heart cells, have to rest in between beats. And that's why it's so hard, so easy to damage your heart because those cells are very, very delicate. But most of your cells require 8 hours of good sleep at night to regenerate and recover. You're not getting that. You get 6 hours of sleep in a night, you're starting your day with a cellular deficit. Your cells haven't recovered. So that's number three. Number four is they need good blood flow. So all that metabolic activity, cells produce waste and they're trying to purge toxins. They need to have that washed away. The solution to pollution is dilution. So they need to be constantly flushed. And we get that from being physically active all day. So that's one of the really big benefits. So, in that category that I call physical stress, also things like trauma and things like that fit in there. But all of our cells, we need to be physically active. Being sedentary is really bad for our cells. So, those are the main ones. And then the last one is our cells need protection from microbes. And we have the immune system, and that does a pretty good job. But our body is more like an ecosystem with lots of microbes in it. And all those microbes have to eat. And what they eat, or what one of their primary foods, is our cells. Everything living is food for something else. All of our cells are food for bacteria and other microbes. So that's kind of a critical thing. So I'll take a break there and let everybody absorb that. I think that's so that those five categories of things, those are the things that cause every single known illness right there.
Profound. And I just want to reiterate them because they are so important. And so if you haven't already heard it, you got to pick up this book, The Cellular Wellness Solution. It is a beautiful resource that you can come back to again and again. And Dr. Rawls does a great job of going through what each one of these things are. So top of the list is nutrients. Our cells need nutrients. They need a clean environment. They need downtime to recover. They need good blood flow, and they need protection from microbes. And it's funny, as you're going through these things, I'm thinking, well, that's what we need. And what is we? What
Right.
is we but the sum of our cells?
Correct.
So, eureka,
Yeah, it's a big deal.
it's a big deal.
So you look at what people are eating and the constant chronic exposure that we have to toxic substances with things floating around in our air and our water and our food, and the fact that average Americans get 6.5 hours of sleep a night, and most of us are living a sedentary lifestyle. And beyond that, we're not getting the kind of protection from from microbes in our diet and other things that we really need. We can't depend on our immune system alone. It's not surprising that 60% of the population are sick.
And I'm surprised by your description of who we are and the environment that we live in and what we're eating, that it's not more people, but we're going in a direction of it being more people and a bigger problem. So I think
Really fast.
this opportunity is right now. I would love for you, if you're watching or listening to this, to do an assessment, because the starting line just for baseline health are all those factors that you just described. Because I'm thinking of the person who is in her 50s and she's got symptoms of chronic Lyme or whatever, mold toxicity or whatever it is. It's not enough just to take the herbs to eradicate microbes. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, and you can look at COVID as an example of an infection that brought people down, one could say, who were already at a little bit of a deficit. Maybe they were eating the wrong foods, they were metabolically inactive or inflexible, they weren't getting good sleep. So it makes us more vulnerable. Is that how you would look at this? Because I'm thinking, like, as a prevention path for life, it's not just about the herbs, it's about shoring up and tending to the health of your cell like a good gardener.
Yep. Yeah. And it's very important. And just very quickly, what aging is the gradual loss of functional cells. So we accumulate cells until age 20. At that point, all of our cells are brand new, and we've got 5 to 10 times more cells than we actually need. After that point, you gradually lose cells and your cells lose energy. You didn't see any 40-year-olds competing on balance bars in some of the top events in the Olympics because by age 40, we've burned through half of our reserves and our cells have half the energy that they did at age 20. So that doesn't mean, though, that you can't live life without having symptoms. So symptoms are when cells are stressed. When cells can't do their job, then we start losing that function. So that's really important to define. Anything can be defined with cellular stress. So any symptom can be rooted to cells. If you have a general symptom like fatigue, it suggests that all the cells in your body are compromised. What healing is the ability of cells in the body to recover and regenerate. It's really important to put those things in perspective. So, what chronic illness is a state of chronic cellular stress. And which chronic illness it is depends on which cells in the body are being stressed. But now we can maybe get down some of the root of that chronic stress when we talk about microbes, right?
Absolutely. And what I'm feeling in all of this is I want to make myself as invulnerable or as protected against these microbes as I possibly can so that a Borrelia infection or some other stealth microbe
Mm,
isn't going to take me down. Um, so, we've got a couple things going on here. We've got the person who is already dealing with these conditions, these chronic health conditions. That's
right,
one track and maybe one part of the population you serve. But the holy grail is prevention and not to go down this pathway. Health
right.
is static, so it's not necessarily binary like that. I used to have MS, but that doesn't mean, I'm bulletproof for the rest of my life. I need to live a prevention lifestyle to help make myself as resilient as possible. So I'm going to let you choose which path you want to go down because there are some people that are suffering right now. And
Sure.
I would love for those people to have some hope and real strategies for healing. And there are others who have been down this path before that want to stay as healthy as they can for life
Yeah.
or prevent something that your father or mother or sister has.
Yeah. Well, it is what I describe as whether you've passed your boiling point or not. All right. So when we get into the microbes, everybody understands microbes that make us sick acutely. So we know more about Ebola virus than we do most of the tick-borne microbes. So things that are highly virulent that can make people sick acutely get a lot of attention. But the fact of the matter is, we're exposed to low grade pathogens for our entire lifetime. Now, pathogen is a bacteria, virus, protozoa, yeast that does harm by damaging our cells and basically by consuming our cells. So, there are a lot of things that want to get into our body and get to our cells. We have microbes that do live with us. We have all the bacteria in our gut and viruses, and we kind of have a friendly relationship with them that they secrete substances that keep pathogens suppressed. But but those microbes are living off of food that we that they can have freely. They're living off of things that we don't absorb in our gut or oils on our skin. But the pathogens are the ones that get into our bloodstream and into our system. Our immune system guards against those things, but it doesn't wipe them out quite as readily as we think. So we pick up things. We get respiratory infections. We pick up things from putting things in our mouths when we were kids. We get tick bites and bug bites and flea bites, and we get scratched by cats. And every single one of those is an opportunity for microbes to enter our body. And just because you don't have symptoms doesn't mean that you don't have things that have entered your system. And I think that's really important. So when you look at tick bites, 95% of the people that I've met who with chronic Lyme disease don't remember a tick bite or becoming ill around the tick bite. And what that tells you is these microbes are more like accomplices than actual culprits. They are just they get in our system and they want to wait for an opportunity. Wait for all those stress factors start stressing our cells. And once our cells get weak, they're vulnerable. So this idea that we can get things in our system, tick-borne microbes, Borrelia, Bartonella, Anaplasma, and other things like chlamydia and mycoplasmas that we can get from respiratory infections and viruses like Epstein-Barr, and the list just goes on and on and on. And then an awful lot of things that we don't know about. Pathogens are constantly trickling from our gut, from our sinuses, from our gums, and they enter our system, they course through the bloodstream, some of them bypass the immune system and they end up invading our cells. And this is a really key thing. So microbes invade our cells because they get protection from the immune system and antibiotics. So all the microbes we know about, even things we didn't think like streptococcus, can enter cells. And if our cells are healthy, they can just become dormant.
Mm.
So, this idea of bacteria and other microbes becoming dormant inside our brain cells, inside cells and throughout our body, inside our blood, is gradually becoming evident. It's been hard to accumulate this evidence because we don't necessarily chop people up that are healthy to look for bacteria inside their cells. So you get it from random biopsies, but you also get it from looking at lab animals, finding healthy lab animals contain bacteria dormant in their cells throughout their body. So it does appear it's a state of nature. So these things stay dormant as long as we are healthy. But this is the key. When our cells are stressed, and that can be generally a conglomeration of stress factors of not eating a good diet, not sleeping, all of these things, our cells are becoming stressed. And then typically something comes along and tips the balance. And that can be something like a new infection,
Mhm.
like you have all these things in your system and you haven't been following good health habits and you get COVID and you're suddenly deathly ill. It's not just the COVID, it's everything in your body starts reactivating. And when they do, then your immune system is working against you. This is where autoimmunity comes in. That if you can imagine microbes, bacteria erupting from cells in a certain tissue in the body, and the immune system sees that and says, oh no, and it starts attacking those cells. I don't think you can explain autoimmunity without considering that factor. So the microbes are trying to shift your tissues into being a food source instead of healthy cells. And that's basically what's happening, I think, with every chronic illness. We have different chronic illnesses because different microbes invade different tissues. We all have different spectrum of things that we pick up. And we have different stress factors of how things come together. But typically, most people have an accumulation of stress factors or a perfect storm of something that comes along and tips the balance. And that's the point that I call the boiling point. So, the boiling point is when you have enough microbe reactivation that it's causing cellular destruction and degradation enough to fuel the microbe stress, the cellular stress that's allowing the microbe reactivation, and it becomes a self-sustaining vicious cycle.
Wow. So beautifully described and at once so shocking and yet so empowering because I'm thinking as you're talking about this, that all of the things that you touched on, going back to what the cell's basic needs are, this is an opportunity to go back to those basics. We need good nutrients. We need a clean environment. We need downtime. We need this movement to get that blood
Yep.
flow. That those are all the elements. You cannot just bypass all of those things and go straight to a killing strategy because you have some reactivated virus or bacteria because you're not addressing the terrain of the human. You're just going directly after the microbe with,
Yep.
but not changing the environment so you're not actually healing. Do I have that right?
Yeah, but that's a significance of that idea of the boiling point and the thing when chronic illness becomes a self-sustaining process. Before that point, and I think that's why, we all have symptoms that kind of wax and wane through our lifetime. So we have things in our lives, we have cellular stress, but we're aware of that. And it's like, okay, yeah, I need to work on my diet. I don't feel so great. And if you do those things, just dietary and lifestyle modifications before that point, that's going to be enough to take you back to where you need to be. But once you cross that boiling point and your system is this frenzy of microbes feeding off of your cells, then you're talking about something completely different. To solve that problem, you really need to reduce that microbe stress, but you have to do it without disrupting the balance of all the other microbes, your normal flora in your body, and you have to do it without worsening cellular integrity. So you've got to reduce the microbe load and support cellular integrity at the same time. And that's where so many therapies out there are missing. People are doing things to help that cellular integrity, but they're not really affecting the microbe load, or they're killing the microbes, but they're killing their cells too. And, that's why so many therapies out there are short-sighted. You have to do those two things.
Beautiful. And this leads us directly into herbs,
It does.
which is the superpower hero of the hour. And I think maybe first, if it is appropriate for you to touch on the difference from a safety and efficacy standpoint. I mean, this is something my understanding is we can be on herbs for life and not have the kind of negative impact on the other cells in our body that maybe
Yeah.
antibiotics would have.
Yeah. It's certain herbs, and I think that's something that I try to differentiate in the body. That when you talk about plants, there's a very, very wide range of things out there. And at one end of the spectrum, you've got culinary herbs and our food plants. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got plants that are poisonous. Nobody would consider using poison ivy to treat a medical condition or a health condition. It has chemicals in it that are actually poisonous to us. Very interestingly, though, a lot of our drugs, more than half of our drugs, come from plants. And everybody thinks, oh, we're getting those from nice herbs. No, no, we're getting those from poisonous plants. We're trying to poison reactions or poison cancer cells. So most of our drugs come from plants that are actually poisonous properties that we would not use in mainstream herbalism. But very specifically, what I use mostly and what I've gravitated through in my lifetime are herbs that have the effect of reducing cellular stress factors, which includes microbes, but they don't have drug-like effects. They don't have, so their potential for toxicity and side effects is very, very, very low. And because of that, we can use those things long term. I have been taking herbs continually now for well over 15 years. And my life is so much better for it.
That's beautiful. I love how you talked about that. And I know that there are some top herbs. Maybe you can talk about that person who is dealing with this reactivated microbe, maybe it's a collection of Lyme disease co-infections. And if you're going to help somebody reduce their microbe load, which kind of herbs do you turn to?
Yeah. Interestingly, one of the things that I was part of my journey was studying traditional herbalism, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, and all of the different disciplines. And I realized that these things were observational. They were observing symptoms or conditions in people, and they just over time, trial and error, had found herbs that helped those conditions. And I think all of those things have a lot of value. But when you start looking more toward a Western science point of view, you can take it down and understand what these herbs are doing at the cellular level. And fortunately, we've had an explosion of science looking at these things over the past 30 years. So it's easy for us to answer those questions. So, what we're gaining from the herb is the plant's defense and regulatory system. So, it's not just making things for us to use, it's making things to protect itself. So, the plant doesn't have a cellular immune system, it has a chemical immune system that it's making this complex spectrum of chemical substances to suppress pathogens that are threatening, but not just bacteria, viruses, protozoa, yeast, parasites, but not affect our normal friendly flora. And that's one of the most remarkable things about herbs that I learned over time, and actually found studies to support this, that herbs have a beneficial effect of suppressing pathogens in the body without disrupting gut flora. In fact, I found that herbs do a better job of balancing a disturbed gut microbiome than probiotics do by a wide margin. So my gut was wrecked when I started taking herbs. I was concerned, I'm going to take this stuff and it's going to be like antibiotics and it's going to wreck my gut. My gut started getting better, and it got better and better and better and better. And I realized, wow, there's something special here. Herbs don't cause resistance like an antibiotic. Herbs don't disrupt cells. So when you look at herbs, they all have antimicrobial properties. Every single herb you take has antimicrobial properties, and that's probably one of their main benefits. But again, it's suppressing pathogens, these low-grade things that reactivate in our body, and not necessarily not disrupting our normal flora. But there are certain herbs that have a little bit stronger antimicrobial properties, or ones that we have done scientific studies to actually document that. And these herbs, it has to do with the stress factors within the plant's native natural environment. So if there's a lot of microbe stress in that environment, think something like cat's claw from a wet, humid environment of the Amazon, it's going to produce a high range of antimicrobial substances. Whereas something maybe that lives in Siberia, like rhodiola, it's not as much microbe stress. It's better for helping us with other kinds of things, though it does have some antimicrobial properties. So there are certain herbs that we have gravitated toward with chronic Lyme, and really have found that they have so many applications. Japanese knotweed, cat's claw, andrographis is such an exceptionally good antiviral. Chinese skullcap, a wonderful herb. So those are just a few of some of those top favorite herbs. And but the herbs don't stop there. They have beneficial properties. So yes, we should be changing our diet, getting sleep, all of these things. But the herbs add an extra level of protection there too. Most herbs that I found actually have some anti-diabetic properties. They protect us from the toxicity of carbohydrates. All herbs have substances that neutralize toxins, neutralize harmful radiation, free radicals. So herbs, all of that spectrum of stress factors, they're protecting our cells. Herbs are the best cell protectants on the planet, and we're not utilizing this thing. It's crazy. So it's really, something we should all be paying attention to.
This is nature's pharmacy, and
Truly.
it's available to us. And people are always looking for what are some low-cost solutions. Well, as far as I can tell, if this is one of the best ways to address the root causes of your illness and for living a long, healthy life, then really what's the downside? I mean, the research has been done on what is the harmful effect of these herbs. And as you are stating, with many of them, it's negligible. We're not talking about poison oak or poison ivy or other things with known toxicities, but for what you're discussing, and I go back to the book because you break things down both by the herb itself and by different conditions like bone health, which many people, women and particularly in, perimenopause and menopause, are concerned about osteoporosis. So you can use this book in the sense, here's prostate health for men, andropause. So there's something for everybody here. Glucose, if you're concerned about, the metabolic issues, which many of us are facing. This book breaks things down into the various herbs to support whatever particular condition you might be dealing with. So I just love this as a resource for that reason. We're not going to, be able to address every person's question about which herb for which particular condition, but I think your book does a fabulous job with that.
Yeah, well, thank you. But there's so many herbs out there that it's hard to go wrong with them. You're going to get benefit from them, and the potential for side effects and toxicity is pretty low. So they offer such a wide range of benefits. And wow, there's just this natural intelligence there that you can't ignore. And I think antibiotics are a really good example of that. When we talk about antibiotics, I think people get this idea that some really smart scientist is sitting in a lab building a chemical to kill bacteria, viruses, or whatever. And that doesn't happen. All antibiotics originally came from a natural source, either a plant, a fungus, or actually a bacteria. All antibiotics came from one of those sources. But when you look at the organism, it has a whole defense system. And we are plucking one chemical out of that defense system. Why are we doing that? Because we're not smart enough to duplicate that organism's entire system. All we can do is see if we can randomly pick out a chemical that might have some toxicity to bacteria. But we also do it so we can modify that chemical, potentiate it, and patent it because we can make more money doing that. So when you look at our antibiotics, they do have good use. They're very good for killing fast-growing bacteria like a pneumococcal pneumonia, and we would be in a worse place without modern antibiotics. But when you compare their potential, their qualities to what's already built in nature, you just can't duplicate that natural intelligence. And, we would be a lot smarter if we were doing a better job paying attention to that.
I think these are really wise words, and it is a call to people to do your research. Don't outsource your health. I did that for 26 years, went to neurologists, and they told me all I could do for the MS was take medication. I was going to be in a wheelchair. My life would be shortened. It was terrifying to hear this. And on the
Yeah.
other hand, I just knew that I wasn't deficient in some sort of medication. That's not why I had the MS, but I kept searching for why. So I cannot urge you strongly enough, if you're watching or listening to this, to keep asking the question, why?
Yep.
Keep asking the question, why are you dealing with what you're dealing with?
Yep.
And the person that you're going to may have the best intention in the world. They might be the kindest person, but you may just be in the wrong place. When you're going to a medical center, you're going to your primary care physician, they may have the biggest heart in the world, but they are not educated in the sources of root causes for the chronic illness. They are trained to diagnose and prescribe medications that are based in these toxic plants that Dr. Rawls is describing. So it's really up to us as individuals to educate ourselves. And that is, it's challenging,
Yeah, it's
but
true.
it's vital.
Yeah, I call it the hows and the whys. Our medical doctors or medical providers are trained to understand how someone is sick, but not why they are sick. And as long as you're just treating the how of their being sick and never getting down to the root causes of why they're sick, you have a pretty low potential for actually making them well.
Yeah.
And so it is really, it's asking that question, why? Why am I sick? Why do I have these symptoms? And just searching for those root causes. And what I found is when you tap into that, your body has this just amazing potential to heal itself. You found that out. You are a perfect example of that. I mean, I don't think you can explain MS without the microbe factor. Both Borrelia, chlamydia, and many other microbes have been associated with destroying the myelin that fuels that illness. And once you start getting to the root causes and calming that microbe load, restoring cellular stress, when your cells are just amazing. They have this amazing potential to rebuild and regenerate. And there are limits to that, of course, but wow, I'm always amazed at how much people can get back when you undo that stress and let them do their job. And this is a very different way of thinking. In modern medicine, what we try to do is fix the body. And what I say is stand back, take away the stress, and let the body fix itself. And and it will do a lot better job than anybody else can do.
I so perfectly said. And I think this also takes away fear. And I just want to address this for a moment because here I am standing at my desk talking with you and, potentially on lab work. I might have a number of things, including Epstein-Barr, including chronic Lyme co-infections, including, name that microbe, right? But these things don't take me down. And why is that? In one person who has a whole host of things that are living in their body and so forth, because they're dormant.
Right.
Because I go to bed at 8 o'clock at night and get 8 or more hours of sleep a night. I eat a
Yep.
certain way. I move every day. I play pickleball. There is a lot that I do. I am in line with my passion and my purpose. And I think this is the opportunity that I really invite people to consider. It's like, how are you living? And not to look or worry about those lab tests. I mean, obviously, people are going to go by how they feel, but somebody might look at my labs and say, oh, that person is going to be really sick. Nope, nope. These are not taking me down because I'm living my life in a way that is aligned with your 5 keys.
Yep. Yeah, it's really important. And it is really just that simple, and it's the more people that are paying attention to that and just taking those simple steps. I mean, it's not all that easy, always easy. I mean, I grew up in the fast food generation and, you know, and my diet through my 20s was terrible compared to what it is now. And I had so many other stress factors in my life, but I made those changes. And I, like you, I'm picky about my diet. I'm picky about my sleep, all of these things, but these things enhance my life in ways that I would never trade. I don't miss things. It's all just so much as part of my well-being, and it's made me a better person. It's given me so many more options in life. And being able to do things at age 67 that at age 50 I thought were gone forever
Mm.
is pretty exciting. I mean, I don't see any penalty there. I look at what other people eat and I used to eat those things and I don't miss them. I look at them and go, God, I feel terrible. I don't want to eat that.
I am with you on that, and this is everybody's opportunity. Sometimes we don't make changes until we hit rock bottom or some,
Yeah,
tremendously devastating symptoms. There's no time like the present moment. We are all aging. And aging cells, don't recover, like you said, as quickly as our younger ones did. So as we age, I'm thinking this is even more of an imperative to stay well. And so I'll
yeah,
ask you in terms of a final question here, because I think this is a perfect place. I'd love to know from your own regimen, what are the things you do, also from an herbal regimen, if you would be kind enough to share, to take great care of yourself, to live a long, healthy life. You touched on getting good sleep and
sure.
your food, but what else do you do to stay well and thrive?
Yeah, it's those five parameters. As far as diet, I have just some basic things that I follow. My number one rule is I try to eat more vegetables than anything else, not fruit and vegetables, vegetables. I try to eat mostly whole foods. I do a lot of my own cooking. Not to say I never buy a packaged or processed food, maybe something like mayonnaise or something like that. But most of the foods I eat, the vast majority of the foods I eat are whole foods. Whole foods are whole cells, which means you're getting all the nutrients that your cells need for to function properly. It's very different than flour that's been extracted from a seed. So, yeah, whole foods are really important. I try to keep my total carbohydrate limit below 150 grams a day. That's not ketogenic. You go ketogenic and it forces you into eating more animal fat. I do eat meat, but I don't eat lots of meat. So that's my protein source. I don't always go through the day having eaten meat. We eat some alternative things too, but it's a pretty small percentage of my diet because I eat so much in the way of vegetables and other things. I practice some form of intermittent fasting. I try to narrow my eating window down to 6 to 8 hours a day and leave hours for my body to recover and my digestive tract to recover. I really do shoot for that 8 hours of sleep tonight, and that's really important. And do things to relax my environment. I live in a place surrounded by trees and marsh, and I'm very fortunate for that. Your cleanest air is in nature. And if you can't duplicate that, though, using air filters, putting plants inside your house, that sort of thing is really important. So, clean air, clean water, clean food, filtering your water, mainly organic food, exercise, yeah, 3 miles a day at the very minimum. But I live in a place where I can do things like paddle boarding. I'm still kite surfing, which is a pretty vigorous sport. I didn't think I would be doing that at age 67. I'm not doing it as intensely as I was doing things like 30 years ago, but still out there. I can still hang and I'm still having fun. Um, and so as I go through life, I'll keep tweaking these things to make them more. As far as the microbe stress, they're always there. We all have dormant microbes. It's a part of life. So I do take a regimen of herbs every day, and that typically includes herbs like turmeric, adaptogens like rhodiola, reishi, cordyceps, usually some antimicrobial herb. I kind of rotate different ones in and out. I'm taking one called Cryptolepis right now. But again, all the herbs have some antimicrobial properties. If you're healthy, you don't need to necessarily take a specific antimicrobial herb. I do because of my history, so I'm really particular about it. But yeah, there's so much good stuff out there that you can do, and it doesn't compromise your life. It enhances your life.
Dr. Rawls, this has been an amazing conversation, and you are just a beacon of hope and inspiration, but of solid research and an amazing body of work and a website. I mean, you've got these beautiful blog posts on your website can you give us your website and thevitalplan.com? I have you direct people wherever you want them to go.
Vitalplan.com is possibly the best place to go. I don't have a medical office any longer because I found that working within the confines of the medical system was actually it hobbled what I was trying to do. So I do a lot of writing. Periodically, I do online health coaching. And I found that for me, health coaching is a lot more valuable than managing medications. We're building a community where people can go and find answers to questions and navigate these different conditions with a big focus on chronic Lyme disease, just because those folks are so marginalized by the medical system, but they're also they get caught in this thing of feeling like they need antibiotics or all these high-powered therapies. And I caution them that toxic therapies have a low probability of making you well. These other things are going to do a lot better job. So but it keeps me busy for sure.
Yeah. Well, we're so grateful you made time to talk with me today and to this audience of people who are doing what they can to recover fully, to completely reverse autoimmune conditions and prevent them. And I'm honored to have had the opportunity to read your book, which is chock full of good information, and to have had this conversation with you. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was fun. I look forward to connecting with you soon, and I will wish you well. Take good
Thank you.
care. And that's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with your friends and family, and if you feel inspired, please leave a quick review so other people can find it too. Now, if you want to beat autoimmune and thrive, make sure you sign up for my free video training at freeautoimmunetraining.com. That's freeautoimmunetraining.com, and watch the first video right away. Take good care. Bye for now.